Hello again, and welcome back to my 4-phase program for learning to master false chord screaming. I hope you're ready to hear me talk your ear out some more, because now we're going to get into phase 1. Now, there are 2 prerequisite skills we need before we can start learning to false chord scream. First, we need to understand the mechanics of proper breathing technique, and we need to figure out how to make our false chords vibrate. Let's start with proper breathing technique. So as I mentioned in the last video, the diaphragm actually only inhales and is the abdominal muscles that allow us to voluntarily exhale. While having a good, strong contraction of our diaphragm is important for inhaling quickly and deeply into our lungs, we really want to focus on how we exhale. So take a deep breath and make sure that you are inhaling deep into the bottom half of your lungs. You can do this by distending your midsection of your torso. When we exhale, we want to feel our abdominal muscles contracting to push the air out. This feels extremely similar to an exercise called a 6-inch killer. In this exercise, you just lay flat on the ground and you elevate your heels about 6 inches off the ground and you hold this position. Make sure you are hinging at your hips and you should feel your abdominal muscles contract to hold your legs up. Another cue that we can use to learn how to activate our transverse abdominis muscle is to take 2 fingers and find your iliac crests. This is the bony part on the sides of your hips that sticks out, and then just come slightly in front about 2 inches. You're then going to try to palpate into the muscle belly, and what you want to do then is to imagine you're trying to make your belly button come closer to your spine. Not by sucking your stomach in as if you were posing for your next shirtless Instagram picture, but more so by actually contracting your abdominal muscles. You should feel the muscle bellies pop into your fingers just a tiny bit. If you have a lot of body fat, it may be difficult to feel this, so just try the 6-inch killer exercise along with any other abdominal exercises you may choose to do. Another cue that might help is to imagine you're using proper lifting technique as if you were lifting something heavy. We're told to engage our core muscles and maintain an erect posture of the spine. So essentially, this shouldn't be too difficult, just contract your abs. So then take a deep breath into your distended belly and exhale. When you exhale, you should be feeling your abs contract while everything in your chest and throat stays completely relaxed. You don't want to squeeze from up here, you want to squeeze from down here. You should feel the most engagement of your abdominal muscles when you're reaching the end of your air supply. I think of it as if I am a tube of toothpaste and it's almost empty, so you try to roll it from the bottom up to squeeze out the last drops. Also try exhaling spurts of air, where we need a quick and abrupt contraction of our abs to get that air moving. It's not too difficult to understand proper breathing technique. The hard part is learning to coordinate how forcefully to contract your abs depending on what sounds you're trying to produce and how loud you're trying to produce them. There is an optimal air pressure and an optimal rate of flow depending on how you're trying to scream, the sounds you're trying to produce. But that comes with time and practice. Just remember that the air pressure you produce and the rate of flow of your air is just one of the variables that we can manipulate. So now we need to figure out how to make our false chords move and rumble around. There are multiple ways of doing this. We're going to get into those, but first I'm going to tell you what you should not do or what you should not feel. You should not feel like the sounds are coming from your vocal cords, as if you were performing the Valsalva maneuver, which is simply exhaling against closed vocal cords and producing a very strainy sound with your vocal cords. You should not be producing the sound by using a C or a K consonant sound, where essentially you're going and we should not feel as if we're trying to contract any muscles in our throat or generate any tension in our throat. It actually happens when we're very relaxed and we just kind of perform a breathy, aggravated sigh. If this doesn't work for you, then try closing your mouth, exhaling through your nose, and maintain a very relaxed posture and try to perform like a little bit of a throat clear. The rumbles may be slow, they may be inconsistent, and they may not sound exactly like the sounds I just produced, because once again my false chords are vibrating very quickly, but it should feel very separate and distinct from using your vocal cords. A lot of beginners have a tendency to also use their true chords by accident when trying to make their false chords vibrate. And this is not too big of a deal, just so long as we're not really tensing up our true chords and trying to make the sound happen with our true chords by essentially blasting the true chords with air and making that air scrape against the true chords to produce a distorted vocal sound. True chord engagement is okay, just so long as the vocal cords are remaining flaccid. If they are vibrating and producing kind of like a humming tone in the background, that can be okay. But what we really want to do is try to isolate our false chords from our true chords. Make them work independently. If you're not sure if you're accidentally engaging your true chords, then just record yourself and try to listen closely, and if you hear any semblance of your actual voice in there, then you're probably using a little bit of your true chords. Once again, not a huge deal, so long as we are making sure that the vocal cords are relaxed and the only tones that they're producing is just kind of like a humming sound. If you're having difficulty with this, then just try not to overthink it. Try not to force the sound to happen, but imagine as if you were allowing the air to bypass the true chords by leaving them open. And imagine you're trying to make the air collide with a structure just slightly above the true chords. One thing that's really funny is that if you were to ask a little kid, like a little boy between the ages of 7 to 10, to talk like a demon, they're probably going to use their false chords and do something like this.
Oh, I'm talking like a demon.
You can also think about it as trying to talk like Christian Bale's version of the Batman from the Dark Knight trilogy, where he had the very gravelly, distorted voice like,
I'm the Batman. Where's the bomb? Where's the Joker? Who do you work for?
But just spend a few minutes each day trying to get your false chords moving over the course of 1 to 2 weeks. You will be surprised at how quickly you can start to gain better control over your false chords just by starting to use them. And once you feel like you can voluntarily make your false chords activate on demand, you're not playing this guessing game with yourself, like you have it and then you lose it and then you have it and then you keep losing it. Once you feel like you pretty much have it and you can just make the sound happen on command, then you're ready to do the phase 1 exercises. Alright, so the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's get into the phase 1 exercises. We're actually going to start by stretching some muscles in our throat and our neck. The first stretch, we're going to look straight up, pointing our chin towards the ceiling. If the muscles in your neck are tight, you may notice that they're trying to pull your jaw open. So to stretch the muscles, simply try closing your mouth. The muscles that we are stretching are called the infrahyoid muscles, and they assist in pulling the larynx down, which is going to help with getting our low-pitched screams later on. Muscles have an optimal length-tension relationship. When a muscle is in a very shortened position, or when it's in a very long stretched position, it is not able to contract with the most force that it can. But because most people these days have some degree of a forward head posture due to driving, using a computer, staring at our phone, well, I typically find that most people have shortened neck muscles. So go ahead and perform this stretch, because why not? Then you're going to yawn. And when you yawn, you should feel the muscles kind of in the back of your mouth, upper throat, stretch a little bit. You want to amplify this stretch by holding out the yawn and trying to feel the most stretch you can. This is to help us get a big open upper airway, which is going to help with shaping our screams and projecting our voice. These next exercises are for our true chords to practice projecting our voice. When we project our voice, we should feel as if all of the sound waves and air are kind of bouncing around at the top back of the roof of our mouth and amplifying outward as if our whole face orifice was the hole in an acoustic guitar. It's a strange sensation because it almost feels as if your vocal cords are higher up than where they're actually located. This is the same feeling that we want with our false chords, but it may be easier to first learn what vocal projection feels like by using the true chords. One method of learning to project your voice is the over the pencil exercise, where you place a pencil between your back teeth like this, and you perform different singing exercises, imagining that you're trying to make the sound waves go up and over the pencil as they exit your mouth. Now, this is a really good sensory cue if you're having a difficult time figuring out what vocal projection feels like. But it's not too difficult of a sensation to feel, and it's kind of like riding a bike. Once you have it, you're never going to forget what it feels like. So this exercise is what I call a roller coaster, where we're kind of making our voice go up and down, and at the peak, we should really be feeling that sensation of vocal projection. Hey! 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 And so once again, we should be feeling as if everything is just kind of bouncing off the top back of the roof of our mouth and getting amplified outward. Next, we want to feel this same sensation while using our false chords. So make some noises with your false chords and try to hold them out for a few seconds. It helps to kind of start on a ramp-up syllable, such as a W, an H, an R, sometimes even a B, because it gives you like that quick burst from the lips. If you're having a hard time figuring out how to make this same sensation occur when using your false chords, then try doing it with your mouth closed, exhaling through your nose, and you should feel a rumbly sensation almost in your nasal passages, or definitely very high up in almost the back of your mouth. I feel it very prominently, almost like it's behind my uvula. And it really should feel as if your false chords are vibrating significantly higher up from where they are anatomically located. As you perform these exercises, try to listen and feel for how quickly you think your false chords are vibrating, as well as how consistently you feel them vibrating. I'm going to continue saying this because it is such a big piece of the sensory awareness component. The next exercise is to practice vowel sounds. Remember to exaggerate each syllable. Right now, you might feel as if there's only one general positioning and shape of your throat that allows your false chords to vibrate optimally. That shape and positioning might influence your vowel sounds, forcing you to kind of pronounce them all in a very similar way, such as I, yeah. I, oh, yo. What we really want to do is try to exaggerate each vowel sound and figure out an optimal positioning where our false chords can vibrate while we're in the shape of really exaggerating each one of those vowel sounds. Remember, A, E, I, O, U.
A, E, I, O, U.
Now, the A, the I, and the O shouldn't be too difficult for most people to produce, but the E and the U require a very different shape of our mouth and our throat. For instance, the E requires a more flatter mouth shape, and the U requires a more narrow, tube-like mouth shape. But once again, we can use a ramp-up or a build-up consonant sound to help set our false chords in motion and get them going. I really like to use a W, like a wah, or a wee, or a woo, so that's what I do.
Way, wee, why, whoa, woo.
But eventually we can progress this exercise to getting rid of that build-up consonant sound. It's almost like you're trying to perform a glottal attack with your false chords, where you're just trying to abruptly set them in motion and get them vibrating without having to build up into it.
Whoa, whoa, ow, ow, wee, wee, woo, woo, ooh, ooh.
Now, this is definitely a harder skill to attain, but it's a skill that you want because it's going to help your screams sound so much more dynamic when you're pronouncing many different syllables and words.
Into the other black, from where there's no coming back. 6 feet below the earth, rotting for the fetid worms. Into the ever black, from where there's no turning back. 6 feet below the earth, rotting food for the fetid worms. Shines on my eyes, shines on my mouth, shines on my mind. She's in my ears, she's in my mouth, she's in my mind.
And then the last thing we need to do in phase 1 is perform all of those same exercises, but now trying to do them in a lower pitch or a higher pitch. Now, when I perform a low-pitched false chord scream, it feels as if the back area of my mouth and upper throat is very open, but as it kind of comes towards my lips, it's starting to narrow more, and I'm also taking my tongue, so imagine this is my tongue, and I'm curling it back, and I'm imagining I'm trying to drop the whole thing down, as if I'm trying to push my larynx deeper into my throat. You might be able to feel this sensation with your tongue if you take your 2 fingers and put them just above your Adam's apple, and imagine you're trying to make your tongue press into your 2 fingers. It should feel slightly as if the bottom portion of your tongue muscles are just lightly popping into your 2 fingers as they contract. And the positioning for high-pitched false chord screams can be found by simply pointing our chin slightly upward and opening the mouth tall and wide. Try to vibrate the false chords in this positioning, and it should really, really feel like that sensation of projection, almost as if your false chords are not located in your throat. It feels like the false chords are like way higher up, almost like it's behind my uvula. Like, we should always feel that for all of our false chord screams, but with highs in particular, you should feel it the most. When you do this, it's probably going to sound very dry and very airy and like very gravelly, just similar to what I performed. But like I said in the last video, high-pitched false chord screams require that the false chords be vibrating very, very quickly. In order for there to be like any color or tone in the sounds, in order to really make those high-pitched false chord screams sound good, we simply have to practice in that positioning, start to feel that positioning more, and once we feel ready, start pushing a little bit more air. Start stimulating the false chords with a little bit more force, trying to get them to move faster and faster. And when I started doing this, I would say it took about 8 months from when I initially started practicing my highs using that positioning till I felt like they started to sound really, really good. It was like gradually over the course of those 8 months, it was starting to sound better and better, and I was getting more color in the sounds. But it wasn't until like a full 8 months of really working on my highs did I feel like I've got this in the bag, they sound amazing. Another ramp-up tactic that we can use in order to get the false chords moving and vibrating a little faster when we're in the high-pitch positioning is to use like an eow.
I think about it like revving up a chainsaw or a lawnmower.
Ew. 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 Ew.
Typically, high-pitched false chord screams sound like a demonic serpent snake. Now, the next exercise is to learn how to perform throat singing. Learning this from the beginning is really important because it's going to help with that endurance aspect later down the road. You see, throat singing is essentially learning to position our false chords optimally where they can vibrate very quickly with the least amount of air. In the next few weeks that you start kind of using your false chords and they're starting to vibrate more easily, then try working on throat singing. If you've felt like you can make your false chords vibrate very easily from the beginning, then start working on throat singing a little bit earlier. But you want to apply all the same stuff that we've talked about. Feel the projection of the false chords. It should feel very high up in the throat, and try to essentially make the sound of a didgeridoo. A didgeridoo is that wooden tube-shaped instrument that people blow on and it goes like brrr. But this is what throat singing sounds like. Like I said, throat singing satisfies that coordination demand of trying to find the positioning where the false chords can vibrate optimally with the least amount of air. And when we push more air, the false chords are already in a positioning where they're going to vibrate and produce the best sound they can. So it allows us to incrementally increase our force until we find just the right level we need for it to start sounding more like a false chord scream. Just the right amount of effort, just the right amount of force and air pressure, and no more. So we can start with throat singing and gradually push more air until we get a good sounding distortion. Find a comfortable level where you are satisfied and you're like, you know what? This is the amount of air that I want to give. I don't want to give more than this and be constantly tiring myself out. If I give less than this, then it just still sounds like throat singing. So find that happy medium where it's starting to produce more of the false chord screamy sounding distortion. You might think that it sounds better when you put more power into it. You might think that all the energy and force behind it is what's going to make it sound good. But trust me, when you practice in that comfortable level of effort and air pressure, over time, you're going to naturally find the positioning where your false chords can produce the best distortion for that given amount of air pressure. This is the key to having a lot of endurance with false chord screaming. And then the last thing is to practice to other false chord screaming vocalists. It is helpful to listen to somebody else who's good at screaming to understand the sound that you're trying to imitate. You might have to search for a false chord screaming vocalist who, for whatever reason, just sticks out to you, and when you listen to them, you get an idea. You can almost feel the technique while listening to them. It allows you to perform those mental repetitions, and even if it's just a single line and a single song that you feel like, you know what, I could probably do that. I can work on that and I feel like I can get close to that, then that's what you need to be doing. These exercises are helpful, but the highest quality of practice you're going to get is by practicing to another vocalist who's false chord screaming in such a way that you feel like if you tried, you could imitate. It may take a few weeks to a few months before you get anywhere close, but when you listen to that person, you can hear their false chords vibrate, and you can almost get an idea of how they're producing that sound, the general positioning of their throat, how much air they're pushing. As a beginner, it might be a little bit easier to try to imitate the gravelly death metal-y style of false chord screaming that most death metal vocalists use. Good examples would be like Dark Tranquility, Dimmu Borgir, I don't know if I pronounced that right, and then Demon King is another good example. And then the deathcore style of false chord screaming is usually a lot harder. Like deathcore vocals are really trying to push everything to the next level, but I'm going to put a list of bands who solely use false chord screams for like 99% of the screams they perform in the description, and you can check some of those bands out. So that's pretty much it for phase 1. Here are some milestones that you can try to assess yourself with to determine if you're ready to move on to phase 2. These are all pretty much subjective, so try to really think deeply about how you've been progressing and how you're currently performing your false chord screams. So you feel as if your false chords are vibrating faster and more consistently, and like I said, it's trivial at this point. You definitely can use your false chords. You're getting better engagement of your abs, and you're starting to coordinate how you push the air using your abs with the sounds you're making with your false chords. You're starting to get much better sensation of how you're positioning your false chords, being able to tell the slight differences between how you're positioning them for a low versus a mid versus a high, or how you're positioning them when you pronounce different vowel sounds. And your false chord screams now have a little bit more tone and more color to the sound. By this point, you also might have the feeling that, you know what, this is a viable technique. At first, I couldn't understand how this was a feasible way of producing these sounds and doing vocals. You know, it felt so unnatural to use my false chords, but now it feels significantly more natural, and I'm starting to really understand how people can take this and run with it and are able to produce all these different crazy sounds. So that's it for phase 1. When you're ready, check out the phase 2 video. We're going to be advancing some of these exercises and also adding newer, more complex exercises. So if you like the way I teach metal vocals and you want to support my channel, please comment, give a thumbs up, and subscribe to Scream Theory. I'll see you guys in the next one.